Thank you so much for listening to the Ignorance Podcast this year. To wrap up the first year, I asked most of my guests, how has your research impacted you? If you are a researcher, what you study and how deeply you go into something has to influence you in some way. To do that, you have to really care about it, and you automatically will come out changed. I hope you have heard the passion in all my guests' voices for their research questions. Ignorance is bliss, because when you don't know something, it's an opportunity to learn. I've learned so much from every episode, and I'm excited to learn more in the new year. I hope you enjoy hearing how everyone's research from the last season has influenced them. James Wilson asked, do you really need to use all this energy? What has changed in your life because of your research? What do you pay attention to more because of it?
So I think I filmed this about a year ago. I've been asking myself, what did I do for the last year? And I do think I've reflected on comments that I made in your podcast. I filmed it right before the change in administration, and that precipitated so much upheaval in universities. Funding sources changed, different programs were taken down. A lot of people were nervous, was their research going to be misunderstood because they used a keyword that was in some list? And even my own grants entered a period of freezing for a minute, and we weren't knowing really why. It caused me to ask, what are you doing this for? Do you need the government to fund it, or is there industry involved? And if your goals really are about reaching where people are, then you shouldn't be worried. It kind of came to a place of calm afterwards. And I feel like that's really helped me focus on my future research projects. It's just, if you're doing this for the good of the people around you, then you don't have to worry about who's funding it. Just keep working on it and do good work, encourage other people. And I've also been able to sort of get more industry connections going. I'm really proud I got a book completed with my colleague Emily King on data science linear algebra. And it really is one of the directions that I think I wanted to move my subject area of mathematics. What can math do for you now? What are some long-term takeaways? And those are things that I've been pushing out. And I'm starting a new project with a logician, trying to work on math or computation. The ideas are really just, how do we find ourselves educating the people around us to work in a world where the machine-assisted AI can do some things really well, but not everything gets done really well. And I've been really enjoying creating new material, thinking about new questions and how I can sort of position what I do for the next 20 years of my career to be about getting the kind of math out there that is both fun, but you can look back and say, it also helped me in my career. It helped me as a student try to think about problems in a way that I could use them long term. And not everything is landing. I've been able to teach a couple courses using this new material. And it's quite fun to see how students take it in directions you weren't expecting. They bring in intuition you didn't have. You have to refine your ideas and learn to use the tools rather than be sort of surprised by them. And I'm really encouraged by the way the young people are really excited about the future. They're nervous too, but I sort of try to remind them we've seen these kinds of ups and downs in so many career paths. But don't worry about that too much. You've got a lot of energy. You got some time. You've got some of the best tools we've ever had in science. So I'm pretty hopeful. That's what I've been doing for my last year.
The question that you posed during your podcast was, do we really need to use all this energy?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of writing a grant with a colleague right now, precisely on trying to lower the cost of executing what are called large language models, or LLMs, if you've heard those. If you don't know those phrases, then it's like your AI and your machine learning, your ML, those keywords, whenever you hear those initials, then probably behind it is this type of mathematics called a neural network. And it has this very simple but very large set of data that gets added over and over and over again. And through work that I've been doing over the last decade, we found different ways of recording what that information is and simplifying it. It's called sparsification, just using a whole lot less data, like orders of magnitude different. And so we're now proposing a grant to try to scale this up into the scale of what's being done on the real market. And this has exponential improvement on the energy costs if you can really implement it. And even if you only get a version of it, a smaller version is an improvement. And our goal is just, we shouldn't need to compute that much to get this information out. We hope to launch it over the next, say, 2 to 3 years. I'm pretty excited to be learning from more of the computer science side of it, more of the kind of systems engineering side, some of the real nuts and bolts of machines and the energy usage. And he's excited about using some of these algorithms that have never been available before. So it's kind of a nice mesh. Both of us get to learn something and see, where do our techniques bottom out? How do we tune for the different goals and the different techniques available on each side. So I hope to test some of this stuff out on more realistic sized problems over the next 2 to 3 years.
How has kind of asking this question or thinking about this energy consumption affected you kind of more in your personal life as James Wilson?
I've it's not new to me to think about the energy consumption that's going around me. I try to minimize what I use. And I have one vehicle that I share with my whole family, and I try to bike to most places. And sometimes I ask myself, could I do with no vehicle? I happen to live close enough to be able to pull that off. But I recognize the more realistic thing is that I can do some small things for myself, and they might impact me and my welfare, my health, and they might show by modeling to my family what's important to me. But I honestly do feel that I come back to the impact I can make by doing something personally different is not as meaningful as what I could do by teaching people and creating tools that they might use someday to lower these costs. To even just bring up the question in front of a group of 50 students and say, well, what energy is going into this? You take a machine learning algorithm and you drain some fraction of a dam to create the electric power to run that language model. And then you give a baby that's 2 years old a banana, and it can do the same. It just shows you that there's so much more room for us to improve on this. And I think that my personal view is that I just take that more and more seriously as I watch that we're starting to return to, maybe we're going to buy more nuclear plants so that we could do this. And I have nothing against nuclear energy, but I have no need to make a product that we don't even know is going to help us improve our technology be the reason to take risks like that for the entire society. If we could instead just tune our efforts to make the usage much more economical, much more energy dependent. So I really think my personal view is that I'm becoming more and more bold in thinking this is really what I want to spend my time on. Let's make sure everybody's aware it is a problem. Let's make sure everybody's aware they can do something about it. And if that's a little bit preachy, I get it. But I would ask somebody to come back with, what alternative do we have? Is there any risk in lowering the cost of energy? Is it really cause us a negative downside? I haven't seen it. So why not give it a shot? There's enough of us researchers who can try other things. This is my niche. I'm just digging in, I guess.
Larry Hunter asked, where do our desires come from? What has changed in your life because of your research? What do you pay attention to more because of it?
Well, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story because the research I'm doing now is relatively new, and it's came to me in part in a reflection of something I wanted to change about my life. So I had a failed bout with retirement a couple of years ago. I was unhappy with my old job and quit and decided that maybe it was time for me to retire. A couple of months into that, I realized I was doing all of the same stuff. So I was still meeting with students, I was still writing papers, and it just seemed to me foolish if I was going to keep doing all of that stuff, not to get paid. So I decided I would go back and try and find another professor job. In doing that, I tried to figure out, okay, what do I really want? What are my goals for this next phase of my life, my career? Because I had made this break and I had an opportunity to really rethink things. And if I was going to go get another professor job, I was going to have a pitch about what it was that I wanted to do and why they should hire me. And I felt there's an opportunity here to really reflect and think about what do I really want? What do I really want to be working on? What interests me for this? I'm not going to live forever. I want to do something that matters with my time. So I spent a lot of time thinking about, what really matters to me? What do I think is important? And that reflection led me to wonder, how do we figure out what's important to us? How do we know what we want? And, it's a classic human question. There's been a lot of people thinking about and writing about, what do we really want? And how to discover what you really want. And that led me to question the origin of wants and to wonder where they came from. I have a really funny background for that because I spent so much time doing AI and I spent so much time doing biology. And so I had an inspiration about how I can develop a biologically based theory of wanting, of goals. And it completely changed my life because, I got a new job and I'm working on this new thing. And it also, the progress I've made in understanding where desires come from have really changed my perspective about a lot of them. So, for example, a slogan, if you will, of this theory is what you want depends on how you feel, on how you're doing. So our feeling of malaise, what that feels like, is very ancient. There's been a very circular kind of path between my reflections in my life about where does desire come from and what do I really want, and my theorizing about its origins and the research I'm doing now on those topics.
Yeah, I love selfish questions. Those are my favorite. I would argue my research are totally selfish things that I just want to also know. And I think other people could benefit from in general. But when they're selfish, it really pushes us to learn and go deep.
I'm gonna go one step further. I think that one of the critical things about human beings and our desires are that we share them with each other. There's a scientist named Michael Tomasello who's done a really beautiful job of looking at the difference between primates and human infants and how we learn to share intentions with each other. I think the origins of that were probably in parental investment in offspring, because you can invest things in offspring that they're going to need. You can put a yolk in an egg, but the world is dynamic, and there are some things that offspring need that you can't know ahead of time. You have to see and detect, and then act on. And I think that is the origin of love. And I think that is a really critical piece of how human beings operate and come to find the things they want to do.
Teri Hernandez asked, what should pregnant people eat? What has changed in your life because of your research? What do you pay attention to more because of it?
I would say that my research has taught me more about the world than any textbook. I love my data. They tell stories. They tell stories through pictures. We make graphics through the numbers, but also kind of qualitatively in what women and participants in our research tell me. So some examples from that are, I learned kind of from a textbook what pregnancy metabolism is supposed to look like under the skin. Learned it from my research and from studying it sort of in our protocols. And this is all I also learned about nutrition in pregnancy. Sort of in textbooks, it's supposed to be something, but really with living, breathing women, it's a totally different experience. So the other thing that has really changed for me from my research is that it's really taught me the value of partnership with people, with women who are, very giving to be part of our studies, but even outside of our studies in pregnancy, with participants in any clinical research. I think they're very special individuals who give you a glimpse into their lives. It's also taught me the value of partnering with colleagues because, all of us are stronger in teams across disciplines.
Has some of the stuff that you're studying impacted how you live your life in the regular world outside of the research world?
Yeah. So I would say that one thing that has changed, not right away, but after many, many years of research, is it's helped me learn how to engage in deep listening with others, which, I'm a clinical nurse, so I'd like to think that I spent a lot of time listening anyway. And really what I've learned by listening very deeply is that I can actually do better. So that's something that even in the last few years, I've really worked on hard, and it's like wearing new glasses for me. That lesson is largely rooted in, stories from women, from colleagues, really listening to people's lived experience and their insights. And it's made my research better, but I think hopefully it's made me a better participant in the world.
Paul Lerner asked, how and what can we learn from the past and present? What has changed in your life because of your research? What do you pay attention to more because of it?
So thank you for the question. What I pay attention to more because of my research is I try at least to see things in a slower time frame and to not get caught up in kind of momentary changes, because from my work as a historian, I realized that you can't really understand what something means until you see it in a much longer framework. So it's tempting, especially in our moment, to get sucked into the constant breaking news cycle and what new thing is happening every second and who's saying what. And I do that too, like everyone else, but I think I also have tried to tell myself to step back and see the world through historians' eyes and kind of imagine that I don't have to pay attention to every little thing, and it will take time to realize what is truly significant and what is kind of a distraction. So I guess to answer the first question second, just to build on that, I do think I find a little bit of solace in these really tumultuous times to say, you know what, let's just take a deep breath and we will evaluate the significance later.
Yeah, I guess, can you give any tips on how to do that? Like the other piece I've thought about in kind of a totally different space is this idea of surfing uncertainty or unknowns. And you can say maybe that's a little bit similar. And the idea of surfing is you don't really know where the wave is going to take you, right? And so you're riding it, not necessarily steering it. Yeah, I guess I'm like curious how you do that.
It's easier to say it than to do it. I'm constantly being asked, you're a historian and you teach a class on fascism, and is this fascism? Is it happening again? And the thing is, history doesn't repeat itself really. It has kind of familiar patterns sometimes, but it's not like it's repeating itself necessarily, because people in the later moment are aware of what happened earlier, and sometimes they're influenced by it and following it themselves. I'm not trying to minimize the threat or the real anxiety that lots of people are experiencing right now, because I think it's absolutely pretty terrifying. But at the same time, it is a little bit reassuring to kind of think people have dealt with adversity before, and they've dealt with political repression, and they've dealt with violence toward various groups. And I'm not saying it's a good thing at all or that it should be happening, of course, but people have survived worse. Maybe that's kind of a very sober message, but I do think that is something that my research as a historian tells me. I've been writing about migration and refugees, and people have to leave. You're never necessarily safe where you think you're safe, but also for those who are lucky enough to make the transition and to survive it, they find new opportunities and new ways of creating lives for themselves and meaningful engagement in their new destination.
Do you think then there's like a directionality to it? So, we've survived worse. So what does that mean, right? Does that mean that we're still improving?
I think it's very hard right now to feel like we're improving. The belief in progress is kind of a modern idea. And by modern, I mean the last few centuries, right? Because before that, many people had cyclical ideas of history or religious ideas of history, and of course, some people still have these ideas, where the real story isn't what's happening here on Earth, but what's happening in heaven or something. And since we've, as a civilization, I guess, have kind of believed in historical change that we produce, and kind of we've believed that our intelligence and our reason, the machines we make and everything are at our service to make a better world. I think that belief, even during World War II, already started to be seen more skeptically, because look at what our technologies have enabled. Obviously I'm thinking about not just the Holocaust, but also the atomic bombs. So in some ways, technology can, of course, lead to progress and improvement, but it can also lead to terrible destruction. And it's our ethical responsibility to ask those hard questions and to think, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do it, right? Just because we can make something doesn't mean we should make it. And I think it's an ongoing question.
Julie Horvath asked, how do genes and microbes influence health and behavior? What has changed in your life, or what do you pay attention to more because of your research?
Great question. I pay attention to a lot more things. I didn't think about microbes on my body and skin as much as I do now. And so I definitely more consider them part of me and something that's probably beneficial to me. So I'm more aware of hand sanitizer and antibacterial soaps. So I try to limit the uses of those things and use more just all natural soap just to get rid of the microbes instead of trying to kill everything, which would potentially kill off some of the good things. I also, interestingly, some of my research focuses on underarm product use and changing that to actually impact the microbes that are on people's skin. So I've definitely changed the types of antimicrobial things I use as well as, antiperspirants and deodorants. I've tried a whole slew of those. And interestingly, because I do a lot of citizen science research, after I wrote one of my publications about the microbes that live in your armpits that produce body odor, a whole slew of people started sending me examples of natural products that they had actually created and wanted me to promote some of those in my research. I tried out some of those products and some of them were not really great. So it really got me thinking about like, what do I put on my body and how does that affect my microbes on my skin, but also my overall health as well as like, how my skin feels, etc. And so that was something that I didn't anticipate, but has been a really fun outstep of my research, just thinking through, how that impacted what I do and how my daily habits changed or not.
Kayla De La Haye asked, how do we transform complex health and food systems for good? What has changed in your life because of your research? What do you pay attention to more because of it?
As someone who studies nutrition a lot, I am surprised that my diet has not changed as much as I might expect. But I think I am a lot more mindful about some of the bigger picture things that have to do with my diet, like the food systems and environmental impacts and types of people that might have been involved in like producing and getting me my food. So I do think I think about that bigger picture layer of food systems because of my work. I think even at a bigger scale, learning about system science and I think the sort of iceberg metaphor is something that sticks with me more in my day-to-day life, that, we often think about or observe a specific event that is just the tip of a pretty complex underlying system. And I think my brain's a little bit more attuned now to think about the complexity that underlies the things that are happening day to day.
Wade Troxell asked, how do things connect beyond just the physical phenomena? What has changed in your life because of your research? What do you pay attention to more because of that research?
My research is around systems, and I apply it in terms of design and also design of robots and intelligent robotic systems. So what has changed over the years is my perspective has zoomed out more than I've zoomed in. I remember early in my professional career, I was so detail involved in everything. And now it's really created a situation where I look at things from more of a systems perspective. So it's less about this, that, and the other thing, but it's around the dynamic interaction of those things together. So with that perspective, I think it's changed how I approach things and the way I see things and the way I try to impact things in my day-to-day work as a faculty member. This might be working with a young postdoc and talking with them. It's thinking in terms of other abstractions that have relevance that then map into details that you can then deal with appropriately in that perspective. So I find myself using this oftentimes in career advice on a particular project of how to think about it, how to work oftentimes with others in complex organizations like cities or universities. The application is much broader than design or AI or robotics, but think about it in terms of societal impacts and those sorts of things. So it's one of those things that it's with me all the time. And I find myself thinking about it and applying it on a regular basis.
I, Mayla Boguslav, asked, how can we help people achieve their goals?
What has changed in your life because of your research? What do you pay attention to more because of it?
Starting this podcast has really changed how I think about the world, how I think about research in an amazing way. In general, I love openness. I love curiosity. And so doing this podcast is also totally selfish that I get to learn about all of these things. And so it's influenced my knowledge. It influences my relationships, studying collaboration. I think very deeply about all of my relationships now. I recently bought a sign that says, never underestimate the power of dysfunctional people working in groups, because I think at some level we're all dysfunctional, especially when we try to work together, but beautiful things can really come of it. And I'd argue a lot of times it's more beautiful when we work together, just in terms of scale and thought process, that having differences really can push our ideas forward. I've really leaned into that. I've really been influenced by everything that I do, in that it really is all about who I am. I am a questioner. I am a curious person. I am open, and I crave relationship and I crave collaboration. And I want it to be as amazing as it can be to really do good in the world. Thank you so much for listening to the first year of the Ignorance Podcast. My biggest takeaway from this year is that I love research and researchers because we all want to make a big difference in the world. We just don't always know how to do it. Taxpayers like you fund research, so we owe it to you and ourselves to ensure you can access and understand our new knowledge and finding. If you have listened to all the episodes this year, you have earned the title Ignerd, an ignorance nerd. Thanks, Dad and Mom, for naming my fans. Don't worry, you can still earn this title. See the description for all the 2025 guests, their questions, and how to get in touch with them, along with a link to all the episodes. Stay tuned to the Ignorance Podcast for more exciting science and research guests next year. Happy New Year, 2026. Have a guest in mind? We'd love to hear from you. Email us at theignoranceinstitute@gmail.com with your suggestions or message me on LinkedIn.